Hello everybody and welcome back to part 33 of our Trumpeter 1200 scale HMS Hood build, where I'm going to start with the ship's boats this week. I'm not going to be doing all of them, there are 15. I'm just going to be starting with 3 of the more straightforward ones. That's the 45-foot launch, and that had a 32-foot cutter inside it, stacked on top. There are 2 32-foot cutters to build. The other has a 30-foot gig, I think it is, stacked inside that. So I might as well make both of the cutters while I've got the parts out. The only trumpeter parts that we'll be using for this are the hulls themselves. All the rest is etched brass, mainly from the Pontos kit. There's just one propeller to rob from the trumpeter kit. It's not provided in the Pontos set. Just a couple of things about the ship's boats. The first thing, it's important to work out the time period for the ship that you're building. Over its career, the complement of boats on the hood altered. Some were added, some were removed, and the positioning of the boats altered on the boat deck as well. They got moved around over time. So this is a 1941 configuration, so it's important to fix the complement and configuration of the boats down for that date. It's also quite difficult to work out from the Pontos instructions and the Trumpeter instructions which boat is which. They're not named on the Pontos instructions, so you've got to work that out. Most of them are fairly obvious, but it would have been helpful, I think, just to make a note on the instructions which boat you were building. So to help me do the suite of boats, what I've done is I've created a listing with the names of the boats, the complement and the position of them on the ship in 1941, and also the trumpeter hull numbers that we need to do the build. And I've just found that helpful to understand what I'm doing and not get mixed up whilst I'm building these boats. So I'm going to get straight over to the bench and we'll get the Trumpeter and Pontos parts out to build this launch and the couple of cutters that we're going to do this week. Right, so I'm going to be using the Anatomy of the Ship book with some other references for the positioning of the boats, and I'm going to start with this one here. So position 5 in the Anatomy of the Ship book, which is a 45-foot motor launch and a 32-foot cutter stacked inside. They don't have cabins on, so they're a nice easy start into the week. So I'm going to start by doing those, and then I'm going to move on to number 4 here, which is a 35-foot fast motorboat. So let's get the parts off for this launch and cutter. So going over to the Trumpeter instructions, we need these 2 assemblies here for the launch and cutter. So they're assembly 15 and 19, and they're detailed here on page 40 of the instructions. So the launch is this one here, and the cutter is this one here, number 19, or assembly 19. So let's get the parts for the cutter, which is E3. We need 2 of these actually. There's one further aft with another boat stacked inside it. So I may as well make the 2 and I'll just store one to one side. So this is the 32-foot cutter, which is D3. And D6. I'll get the other one, as I said, we'll make the 2. Those are E3s in the Trumpeter kit, and E6. So having got the Trumpeter parts out, we now need to cross-reference with the Pontos instructions to get the brass that we need. So we're on page 17 of the Pontos instructions here. And this is the 45-foot launch. You'll see I've just marked out on the instruction sheet which is which, because the Pontos instructions don't tell us which these boats are. So we've got a 45-foot launch and a 32-foot cutter, which is stacked inside. And then elsewhere on the deck we've got a 32-foot cutter with a 30-foot gig inside. So you just need to decipher this bit of the assembly. The actual assembly of the 45-foot launch is here next to it. So these are the parts that we need here. And I'm going to start with that. We'll get that one done. These are all relatively simple. There's not too much work to be done with them. And I'm hoping that I might get away without any soldering when I'm doing these. Maybe just a little bit, just to keep in practice. So let's just move the cutters out of the way so we can concentrate on this one. It doesn't look as though we're going to need this trumpeter part. So again, I'll put that to one side as well. We just need the hull by the look of it. So we'll start by cleaning this up, and there'll be some parts to remove from it. These are most of the parts for the boats on Pontos fret 10. I'll cut the crutch parts out later. I don't want to do these just yet. I'm just looking, and Pontos don't provide a propeller for this, but Trumpeter do, so I'll be using the Trumpeter brass propeller for the back here. So the first thing I'll do is give this a clean up. Get a new blade. That one's extremely blunt. There's a seam down the inside, but that's going to be covered up by the planked bottom here. I'll just test fit the Pontos parts, and there are some bends to make on this. There's a couple to create a step up to these gratings at the back, and then the sides fold up. Check the instructions again. It's easy to bend these the wrong way, and once you do that you're in trouble because they're going to snap off. They'll only bend once, twice at the most. I did that in the wrong order really. I should have done the step first before I folded the edge. It's just going to stop me making that bend properly. See if we can get it moving. There we are. So fortunately I was able to do that by hand. But it just shows it's worth trying to just work out when you make a bend on parts like this where you've got bends in opposite directions. It's just worth trying to work out whether or not you're going to be able to make the next bend. Anyway, no harm done. So that'll sit in the bottom, something like that. Do this next. So these all bend up. So this is where these Tamiya pliers come in really helpful. The narrow nose on them just enables you to go up and bend these small parts. So if I zoom in onto that, you can see here that the pliers will go onto that central part to bend it up, and then we can go in and just fold the sides up forward into the centre of the boat. So we bend it up and then just bend the sides in. And you can just use the jaws to equal them out, just to squeeze them in. These pliers are always on the bench. My hand goes straight to them when I want to do a job like this. I do have the other Tamiya pliers with the longer nose, but I use those far less often. I'll use them when I've got a very long bend to make and I don't want to use the photo etch bender. And at the back we have a couple of bends just to lift the grating up. So you can see how quick that is. Oh, it's just a couple of fair leads at the back. Just need to come up. Nearly missed those. So you can see how quickly you can get the job done using these pliers. It just saves getting the photo etch bender out. It'd be a lot slower doing it like that. These Pontos parts are a nice fit. We'll just fit the engine cover. Now this has some fairly tricky folds on it. On the inside, this is the roof here, and obviously the four sides, and the roof has got a flat ridge on the top. So there are actually two bends about 0.5 millimetre apart. And the danger is that trying to fold it up, you're just going to make a curved twist on it really, rather than a straight bend. So I'm going to isolate the majority of the part with the pliers. So squeeze that really tightly. And then I will use the other Tamiya pliers. These are the long nose bending pliers. And they've also got a very wide jaw on them. So that just enables you to bend the side up a little bit. I'm hoping that's going to be enough. Not quite there, I need to do a little bit more on that. Once you've got the part moving along the fold line, you can make an adjustment and it's usually going to follow the line of the first bend that you made. As I thought, I've broken that off. It doesn't take much, but it's not the end of the world. We can easily solder that back. So I've just soldered that front wall so that it's stiffened up. It's not going to move anywhere. And I can then put the rest of the assembly in. Let's just try and get that in. Okay, so that's the, I'm assuming it's the engine cover, and that should fit in that slot. It might just need a little bit of persuasion, and it goes down through that hole and towards the bottom of the boat. I've just got it a tiny bit wide, I think, at the front. And as I've said before, these Pontos parts are so precise in the location that a fraction of a millimetre prevents them fitting properly. Okay at the front, but I've got it just a bit wide at the sides. So hopefully a couple of swipes with the file. This is another reason for soldering. If I'd have glued this with super glue, it would be fairly tricky to file something like this. The chances are you'd pull it apart. The other thing I can do is just ease the corners on the grating. I'm thinking I should solder that in place, but I'm just a bit concerned about filling the gratings up. This is lovely open grating detail here, and it'd be a shame to lose that. So I'll just have a think about that one. Just one tiny little adjustment to make on this. When I fit this top part on, the gratings at the back just stand a little bit proud, and that's because that step's a little bit high, I suppose, for this moulding. So what I want to do is just ease that step down a little bit. Just take some off either side. So not a lot, just see if that's improved the fit at all. So that's nice, it's quite a bit better now. So it's flush with the edge of the hull side and nice and level, so that's fine. So apart from the propeller, that's the first of the boats done. I'm leaving these assemblies separate because I'll paint them separately and bring them all together once the different parts are painted. I'll talk about the painting details for each boat as we come to it. So that, apart from the propeller, that's how it should look. Let's do those cutters next. So I need one for this particular assembly, sits inside like that. And there's a second one which sits a bit further aft with a 30-foot gig inside it. These parts are numbered slightly differently for the two cutters. 654, this one here, is the one that has the boat crutches on it. And it's just got a slightly different etching pattern on it where the crutches sit on these two thwarts here. So having noted that, I can take both of those off. It's very difficult to see, I'm not sure it will come out on the camera, but the one that has the crutches inside for the gig has got a slightly depressed area on a couple of the thwarts for the crutches to sit. I'm not sure it's going to make any difference really, it's hardly noticeable. but we'll do it the way Pontos wants us to do it. So as before, we'll go in and clean all these parts up. So we'll just clean the trumpeter plastic up. This is Mr. Surfacer. I just want to put a spot on the transom where the sprue gate was, because I've got a feeling that that would show if I didn't. This is the second of the 32-foot cutters. So I'll just finish off preparing the plastic hull and just sand down that Mr. Surfacer that I put on the sprue gate there. So this is the bottom, and this needs folding, so we've got the grates and this little step to do. And the same at the front. And there's a tab at the back actually that folds down, and that just holds the back of the gratings up in the right position. So that sits in like that. Do the thwarts now, and these little brackets need folding up again. On the first one of these that I built, I had trouble getting the part. I had trouble getting this part in. The sides of the plastic sides of the boat were just a little bit too narrow, so this wouldn't slot in, but this one looks, that one's gone in okay. So I don't quite know what I did with the first one. That's fine. These are the last few parts for this cutter. This box fits on the bottom boards. And again, I'm just going to glue this. When you've got a thin part like that to fold, I find just putting it over a knife blade, the square end of a knife blade, helps, and that just, you can just form the part down and get it nice and square on the square edge of the blade. You can just move it up and down and it will form a nice tight, very shallow box. You could also make that part out of some strip styrene. It might actually be easier to do that. So I've got this rod which is just a tiny bit wider than the part, and it's the same depth. So I'm just going to use the brass part to measure up. I think that's much neater in appearance than trying to fold that piece of brass up accurately. So I think they're a lot better. It just shows you don't have to be a slave to these photo etch kits. Sometimes plastic is a better solution, and that's a case in point, I think. The last thing for these boats, apart from the oars, which I'll come back to, is to fold the rudder up. The rudder has some little brackets which need to be folded through 90 degrees, and that's just to give some purchase on the transom of the boat, rather than just butt joint this up. So I'm not going to glue those just yet, because I shall be masking off this boat. They will have white bottoms and grey sides, and I don't want to be masking around the rudder. So we'll just leave those for the moment, get them ready, and we can prime them. As well as the crutches themselves, which will need folding up, we've got these tiny braces and some pads for the top. But we'll just leave those on the fret for the moment and get the crutches folded up. I'll have to be careful with these. The contact point between the two halves is very thin, so it'll be easy to break these. It wouldn't be a complete disaster if we did snap them off. We could always just glue together, but we'll try and avoid it if we can. And then we fold them back. I think I might solder those down at the bottom. That'll make them nice and strong. Okay, these are all the components we need for the boats that we're doing in this episode. So the 45-foot launch is over here with its crutches. In the end, I did fit the crutch pads and also the little braces at the front. It might just be possible to see those, but I'll get some close-up photographs at the end of the video. These are all now ready for painting. I've also done the two 32-foot cutters. One that we're going to stack on top of the launch here, and one that's going to have a gig stacked on top of it in turn. I've made all the crutches for those as well, although I did have to work out one of these because it's misnumbered in the Pontos instructions, another numbering error that we come across in the Pontos instructions. So it took a while to work out which of these crutches are needed. But anyway, in the end we've managed to sort it out. Just by elimination, I had to go through the entire set of boat instructions and tick off all the crutches in turn until I was left with one, which I concluded must be for this cutter. So I'm going to prime these in some etching primer for this brass, and leave it to dry overnight. Then we'll be ready to paint these parts in the morning and get them assembled. Okay, so everything's primed. The plastic parts, so the hulls, are all painted with Tamiya's extra fine primer, and all the brass parts have been primed with some etching primer, just grey etching primer. And I always leave the etching primer to dry overnight just to make sure that it's properly bonded, and that avoids the top coat scratching off later on. So they'll be getting painted tomorrow. Okay, so this is the first stage of painting done. This is Tamiya's wooden deck tan in a lacquer paint, which I've done all the wooden areas in. I've started painting the hulls on the boats as well, starting off with this is Tamiya LP35, which is insignia white, and it's actually a really nice off-white. It's not too stark, and that's in keeping with the toned down blacks and whites that I'm using on the model. So I'll need to mask those off obviously and paint the tops of the hulls, which is going to be, they're all going to be in the grey of the ship. So I'll get these boats masked up and we'll get the grey on, then we can start to put them together. I'll do the other cutter later on. I'm running out of time this week, so I don't want to have to do both of the cutters for this video. So I've done the grey after masking the boats off, and these are probably going to need a bit of a touch up. It's very difficult actually to get a straight waterline on these. But we'll see how we did. That's not too bad actually. It's going to need a little bit of levelling up, and that's annoying that I've missed some masking there at the front, but overall not too bad. So I'll unmask the launch now. Well, that's not good, is it? So that's pulled off. That's going to be quite a job to get that sorted out. It's going to need sanding down, which is a pity because apart from that, it's come out really nice. So I better get on and sort that out. Okay, so I didn't have any choice really but to strip that down and start again with it. To try and get that paint levelled again would have been virtually impossible, and sometimes it's just quicker to strip the whole thing and start again. I'm going to do it a different way this time. I've painted the grey at the top and I'm going to mask the grey off to paint the white underneath. See if that's any easier. But while we're waiting for that to dry, I'll just sort out this cutter, and I want to start off by fitting the board at the back and this bulkhead. I'm doing that first because it determines the position of the bottom boards. So the grating at the back butts up against the bulkhead. Now that's such a good fit in there that I'm not going to glue it. There's more chance of getting glue to spoil the fit rather than having it nice and clean like that. It's not going to go anywhere. So I'm going to leave well alone and keep the glue off of that. But I can fit the oars. Which are here. One convention if you're building ships like this is that the oars were always stored facing forward. This is pretty strong stuff, this MIG acrylic glue. It's certainly enough for these tiny parts where there's absolutely no stress on them. Okay, so that's come out fairly nice. I'll just do a little bit of touch up around the edges and then that'll be ready to go on the launch when we get that sorted out. Right, so we'll try again. So let's hope that this comes out a bit better. The sequence of masking is different, as you can see. I've painted the grey first and then masked that off and done the white afterwards. And actually I'd have to make a note to myself that that is a much better way of doing it. The masking tape's easier to get a good line on the masking. So that is much better. I'm glad I did that. Trying to patch up damaged paintwork is much harder than just starting again. So once that was stripped, it's taken another probably half hour to get that sorted out, but I'm much happier with that now. So I can get the bottom boards in. Just need to work out where they fit. So I'm just going to put some glue up in the prow there. I won't put any glue anywhere else. That should be enough, I think, to secure it. These bottom boards are quite awkward to get into these boats. And that's because they're difficult to level up. Okay, we want this cover on now. I think this was a engine cover, I'm not certain. It's certainly in the position where you'd expect the motor to be. We can put the top on now. Sorry, the thwarts. I must get it right. And again, because of the precision of the Pontos parts, that just pushes in. And that's all I'm going to do with it. So the last thing to do with that in terms of construction is to put the propeller on. And you remember that Pontos don't provide that part. It's here on the Trumpeter etch set. So we just need to get the right one. So we want C25, which is this one. Just give a slight twist to these propeller blades. Then just a trace of medium C8 on the pivot. I think I've possibly overdone the angle of the propeller blades there. But I'm going to leave it alone. I'll make it worse if I mess about with it. So the last thing I want to do is just tidy up the tops of the boats just around the edges. There's just one or two spots where the masking hasn't quite worked. So it's just worth going round and touching those in just to get a perfectly neat finish around the outside. I forgot actually that I'd done the rudder, and I'm stowing the rudders. They won't be going on the boats. They're going to be stowed inside. Just do the same with the launch, just tidy up around the tops. There we are, pretty happy with that. We'll just put that rudder in the cutter for stowage, should I say. I'm going to fix the cutter into the launch here, putting it on its crutches. I've just noticed actually I've lost a grating from the back of the launch, so I'll have to find that. Okay, so that's the launch and the cutter done. I've had a bit of a look around and I can't see this grating anywhere at the minute, but I'm not going to worry about it. It'll turn up. I never throw anything away, any debris or rubbish or paper towels or anything, so it will show up. I'm not going to waste time looking for it now. If it doesn't show up in the next few days, I'll make something to replace that. So I'm not going to get hung up about it, and I do need to get the video edited and posted ready for tonight. It's already Friday morning. So I'll get some photographs of that for the end of the video, now that it's on its crutches and all sorted out. I won't be fitting it to the model just yet. I'm going to do all the boats together and then install them all on the ship. And that's just to make sure I get the relative positioning right with them. So I'm not going to do anything with them. These are just going to go into storage for now. Okay, so that's it. That's the first set of boats done. They'll be fitted to the ship, as I said, when the full set of I think there's 14 or 15 boats to be built and fit onto the model. I've already done the 2 dinghies, and we've now done 3 of the launches and cutters. So there's probably another 10 to build over the next week. And then once they're all done and prepared, I'll fit them to the model in one session. So that's it for this one. I'm going to carry on straight away over the weekend and start building some of the motor launches, or the fast motor boats. It's a shame that I seem to have misplaced the grating for the back of the launch, but it'll turn up somewhere. It's one of those things in modelling that we lose things and they go on the floor or they get stuck to things, and you search around for them, can't find them, and then all of a sudden they just turn up in front of your nose. So I'm hoping that's going to be the case with that piece of grating. If not, I'll just have to think of some other way of replacing it. So that's it for this particular part. We've had an easier week this week after the trials and tribulations of the mainmast in the last couple of episodes. So that's it for this one. I'll see you again hopefully in another week's time. In the meantime, stay safe, enjoy your modelling everybody, and I'll see you next Friday with part 34 and some more of the ship's boats. So bye for now.